Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to the home of British motor racing, the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, playing host to the second event of the season in Ginetta's busy 2023 racing calendar. It's the first race of 3 this weekend for the Ginetta GT Academy that will open up our racing account here on this soggy Saturday afternoon. The conditions far from ideal out there. We've had sort of drizzle on and off throughout the day, and it's a very damp track that greets the drivers ahead of this first race of the weekend. Cars making their way around towards the grid then, and as you can see, lots of spray being kicked up by the competitors in this 17-car grid for the Ginetta GT Academy that sees Nick White for Raceway Motorsport take the pole position from Mackenzie Walker in second place, about 3/10 between them in qualifying. Richard Just is the highest placed of the rookies, starting third overall, whilst Ravi Rammeed will share that second row with him. Then row number 3 for Matt Shaw and Ed Akers. Those two had some good battles at Alton Park last time out. Then it's Emma Tomlinson, the first of the Tomlinson Brigade, starting 7th alongside John Kearney. Top 10 completed by Thomas Shelley and Mark Ellman, the Century Motorsport driver ahead of the SVG Motorsport car. Then Paul Livesey and Amy Tomlinson completing the 6th of 9 rows. Charlotte Lowe is next, Lucy Tomlinson is next, and then Ben Cook with Harry Cook together on the 8th row of the grid. Phil McGarty will complete the 17-car lineup. So this, the second event of the season, as we said. The season opener at Alton Park produced some mixed conditions and produced 2 different race winners overall, with Nick White and Ravi Rammeed sharing the honours. Rammeed claimed 2 race victories, but still arrives here at Silverstone 3 points adrift of Nick White in the early championship tables, but it looks like being perhaps the most competitive season that we've seen so far from the GT Academy. This third year of racing for Ginetta's newest championship. It was where we saw the debut of the Ginetta G56, which is now starting to pop up everywhere, it seems, in National Motorsport. And the GT Academy Championship, which last year saw Mark Warren claim a fairly convincing championship victory, it must be said, over Thomas Holland. In the first year, it was Toby Trice, who's going on now to achieve good things in other one-make GT-style racing. He took the championship again by about 60 points or so over Roy Alderslade, but all of the signs so far in 2023 point towards this being a much closer fight, at least between Nick White and Ravi Rammeed. Both of them very evenly matched. Nick White, so far, at least, the slightly more consistent, but both of them were on podium in all 3 races at Alton last time out. Thomas Shelley also bagged a couple of podium finishes, as also we saw a podium from Ed Akers, so 4 different drivers managing to finish in the top 3 positions at some point over the Alton weekend. But another 3 races here on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit could throw up a few more surprises, especially given the conditions that are being faced by the drivers right now. Perhaps the man we really need to be focusing on is Mackenzie Walker, the red, white and black car starting 2nd on the grid, number 70, because he had a very up and down weekend at Alton Park. He only finished one of the 3 races, but that race he did finish 4th, and so we know he's got front-running pace. He stuck it on the front row here today and is more or less matching Nick White for 1 lap pace. How that will translate over a 25-minute race, we'll have to wait and see. Slightly longer races here at Silverstone than we saw at Alton Park. And a couple of reasons for that, but one of them being the fact that this is a much longer circuit, 3.66 miles in length, the 18-turn Silverstone Grand Prix track. So it takes a lot longer to get around. In qualifying earlier on, which was held again in wet conditions, it was a pole position time of a 2 minutes 33 for Nick White. So it is not going to be a race in which we see a lot of laps completed necessarily, and so for that reason they've given them an extra 5 minutes of racing, which means an extra 5 minutes of action from the Ginetta GT Academy Championship. Their 4th round of the championship about to get underway then. No rain falling currently, so over 25 minutes, hopefully, track conditions might start to improve a little bit. We won't get down to a full dry circuit, that's for sure, but maybe a drier line will start to materialise if those ominous-looking black clouds overhead don't dampen the circuit once more. Windscreen wiper still going on Mackenzie Walker's car in anticipation more of the spray that is about to be unleashed because the red lights are on. 25 minutes of racing about to get underway in the Ginetta GT Academy Championship, and away they go. Good start made by Nick White from pole position, and Mackenzie Walker I don't think is going to be able to quite go with him, so it's Nick White with a very healthy lead into the first corner. Slightly tentative there, as you'd expect for Richard Just in the number 99 car, top rookie on the grid. Not quite sure how fast he could go through Copse Corner on the opening lap, so he loses a couple of positions overall, but might still be looking good within the rookie class. Side by side, the orange car there was Ed Akers moving through into, I think, 4th, as they went through Maggots and Beckett's and then going straight off the road and taking with it Richard Just, and they've collided in the runoff area, and again slightly as they came back on the road. I don't know what that was all about, but Ed Akers and Richard Just getting very, very up close and personal. They're still side by side onto the Hanger Straight, and remarkably, they're still fighting for 4th position because the lead is held by Nick White, Mackenzie Walker is 2nd, Ravi Ramyeed is 3rd, but Just is slowing. Richard Just is slowing down the Hanger Straight, damage to the car, presumably after that side-to-side contact that he had with Ed Akers, and that is such a shame. After a really impressive qualifying effort, Richard Just out of the race. The car, nothing obviously wrong with it on that side, but it did look as if it was sort of leaning over to one side more than the other. Mackenzie Walker now goes for a spin from 2nd place, and Ed Akers again goes off the track, this time to avoid the rotated number 70 car, which is now sat perilously in the middle of the road. Another car goes around in avoidance. That was Lucy Tomlinson, I think, number 13. It is all kicking off here on the opening lap of this GT Academy race with, well, one car out seemingly already. These two very lucky to still be in the game. And Ed Akers seemingly at the centre of a lot of it. He wasn't the cause of Mackenzie Walker's spin there at all, but still very close to collecting him. So Walker spinning from 2nd, Just, who started 3rd, is out, and that means that now Ravi Ramyeed will move through into 2nd place, as here a big dive up the inside from Thomas Shelley, number 76, as he tries to find a way past John Kearney in the number 25 car, but the grip in the wet conditions always is around the outside through these corners, and so Kearney able to hang on. Ed Akers now jumping up the inside of somebody there coming out of the loop. That was Matt Shaw, the turquoise number 33, but then Akers finds himself rally crossing again. Got a wheel, I think, on the painted curbs, lost all traction and just understeered off the road into a bit of a mud bath that's forming on the exit of Aintree Corner. So back through will go Matt Shaw, also through goes Thomas Shelley and John Kearney perhaps, although Akers will surely try to hang on around the outside, which he does. That gives him the inside line for Luffield at the end of what's been a very energetic opening lap, and Akers again trading paint, this time with John Kearney. They both run out wide, and that, I think, was Mark Ellman coming through on the inside of the John Kearney car, number 88, yes it was. There are the leaders, Nick White and Ravi Ramyeed, having a comparatively straightforward opening lap, really. 1.6 seconds between them. A further 5.5 back then to Matt Shaw in 3rd, Thomas Shelley 4th, Akers 5th, Ellman 6th, and Kearney 7th. The only one of those drivers that I just mentioned who are running in the rookie class, well, that is Matt Shaw in 3rd place. So Matt Shaw taking over the rookie lead now, and actually running in the same position from which the rookie pole sitter started on the overall grid, that being Richard Just. He and Lucy Tomlinson not coming through at the end of the first lap, although Lucy has just come through after her part in the shenanigans down at Club. So there go the Ed Akers, Mark Ellman and John Kearney trio. GT Academy racing is always good fun, but throw in a bit of wet racing and these cars become a real handful to drive, and that's why we've seen a few little mistakes on the opening lap. Certainly gives us plenty to get excited about, and there's more now to come perhaps as John Kearney tries this fight back to recover some of the lost ground. Couldn't quite get through on the inside at Stowe there, and so Mark Ellman retains 6th position. Amy Tomlinson, by the way, and Charlotte Lowe will at the moment complete the rookie podium, score points towards their own separate classes. So the rookie class at the moment being led by Matt Shaw after 2 race wins, 2 class wins at Alton Park. The other class win went to Richard Just. Well, he had a non-finish in the first race at Alton Park and went on to finish 2nd in race 2. And then won the class in race 3. He'll be hoping for a similar sort of recovery now over the rest of the weekend after his Silverstone event starts in the same vein with another non-finish. Onto the brakes into Village, Ellman peeking up the inside there of Akers, and John Kearney carrying visibly more speed into the braking zone, but a bit too much speed perhaps. He runs way off the road and would be very cheeky to try and convert that into an overtake into the loop. Decides better of it. Akers again slithering out over the curbs. You can never accuse Ed Akers of driving within himself, can you? He always gives it 110%. And is continuing to do that again here at Silverstone. He was one of the stars of the show at Alton Park, always in the thick of the battles. Speaking of battles, by the way, we've got a pretty good battle for the race lead developing, because Ravi Ramyeed has been quicker than Nick White in all 3 of the first 3 sectors on this lap. So those two are going to come through almost nose to tail, I think, this time. As Matt Shaw, you're following there, the turquoise car, the rookie leader, is also being reeled in slightly by Thomas Shelley. So the top two go through now, covered by only 0.6 of a second. There they are. Look, Ramid with the fastest lap, a 2:35.1, and that was just over a second faster than race leader Nick White. Then the fight for third sees, well, actually, Matt Shaw, according to the timing screen, a 10th faster than Thomas Shelley that time. Then you've got Elman up into 5th, Kearney 6th, because something's happened to Ed Akers. Surprise, surprise, he always does seem to live life on the edge, doesn't he? He came through down in 7th place for some reason on that lap, having been 5th when we last saw him. Leaders then out of the Magnus Beckett sequence to the Hanger Straight. And Nick White, having been caught now by Ravi Ramid, has the unenviable task of trying to defend from him, and defensive driving in the wet is very different to defensive driving in the dry. In the dry conditions, well, that is what you would expect Nick White to do, drive down the inside of the track into the braking zone, so as not to allow Ramid the chance to slip up the inside. But because the grip in the wet is on the outside, you can see Nick White just slid out wide, didn't have the purchase on that inside line, and so Ramid gets the better exit. He's alongside, he's ahead into the braking zone, into Vale. That was brilliant stuff from Ramid, and he goes through into the lead. So Ravi Ramid and Nick White separated by just 3 points, remember, in the championship after the opening rounds at Alton, and they are separated by, well, less than 1 car length as they come out of club, but now with Ramid in front. Nick White won't like that, but he might now be able to learn something by following Ravi. Well, he doesn't want to follow him, does he? Looks up the inside again into Abbey Corner. That's a brave move in the dry, let alone in these conditions. Ramid slides out over the white lines a little bit. That didn't seem to lose him too much time, though. And Nick White will, in a way, be liking what he's seeing here. Ramid clearly pushing hard. White is up the inside through Village. That camera angle almost made it look like they were going to collide, but they just avoided each other. And Ramid certainly not escaping yet, is he? Nick White is sort of looking up the inside into every braking point and not really fully committing to a move, but certainly doing enough to keep Ravi Ramid's attention. Race underneath the bridge towards the braking zone at Brooklands, one of the best overtaking chances on the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. You can see there isn't a lot of standing water, is there really? So the track conditions are likely to improve. And that means the drivers will have to think a little bit about protecting their tyres, potentially, or start overheating as they get deeper and deeper into the race. Out of Woodcote then, flat out even in these conditions, to the timing line. Lap number 3 of the race is completed with a 0.7 of a second advantage now to Ravi Ramid, who perhaps in the last sort of third of a lap has started to settle a bit more out in front. There is the 3rd place battle. Matt Shaw ahead of Thomas Shelley still. Matt Shaw, remember, the rookie leader. And then this has been really the best of the battle so far, apart from that lead scrap between Elman, Kearney and Akers. And Ed Akers, we saw, had a moment, well, we didn't see it, but we surmised that he'd had a moment a lap ago. This was said moment, going onto the brakes into Brooklands, turning in, all looks good, then it doesn't, and he gets sideways, and does he go around completely? No, did a great job to keep control, but stalled the engine, and that really was the bigger time loss. So it wasn't so much the slide that hurt him. He would have lost 2 places, sure, but actually it was the stall that meant that he dropped a couple of seconds back from those 2. But he was a full second faster than Mark Elman in 5th on the previous lap. So Ed Akers should be back with them in the near future. Leaders coming down into Vale and Club. Oh, and that's Ravi Ramid, the race leader, goes around now, just as we saw from Mackenzie Walker on the first lap. And, well, Ravi Ramid finds out exactly how easy it is to loop these Ginetta GT Academy cars under acceleration, and hands the lead back to Nick White. As is so often the case, he had just put in his fastest first sector, had Ramid, although interestingly, White had been a couple of tenths faster even than that, so they were both pushing on, and unfortunately it was Ramid who made the first mistake. Akers, again, making friends with the gravel trap nearly, coming out of Club Corner. Yeah, Nick White then re-inherits the race lead, and that goes to show that sometimes it's not the fastest driver who will come out on top, especially in the wet. It's the smoother, more consistent driver, the driver who makes the fewest mistakes, especially in cars that are specifically designed to be a little bit tricky to drive. This is a place to learn your craft within the Ginetta racing ranks. Mark Elman learning that was a bit too much speed to carry through the loop, but again, grippier side of the road on the outside, gets away with it really, and keeps John Kearney at bay. Down underneath the bridge again, into the braking zone at Brooklands. Kearney going to be close enough to have a look up the inside. Well, he does have a look. They sort of go either side of the traditional racing line there. As long as you're not running on the rubbered up bit of the racetrack, then you should have a reasonable amount of grip. You can see that the two different approaches there going into Brooklands corner. No real gain or loss for either driver, so pretty even through that sequence. Back out of Woodcote corner then. The lead now for Nick White over Ravi Ramyeed is 5.7 seconds. But with just over 14 minutes still to go, Ravi could still mount a bit of a comeback. There is Kearney up the inside of Elman. That's for 5th place. Finally gets the move done at Copse corner. Having sat behind Mark Elman for a couple of laps, he's gone by, but is Elman fighting back towards Maggots and Beckett's? He's trying, but no, Kearney will get there first. So John Kearney up one more spot, and just in the nick of time as well, because the orange car looming ever larger in their mirrors is Ed Akers, who we know is fast. Just whether or not he can keep it on the black stuff for the next 13.5 minutes is the question. Over the curbs again, Akers with a good exit there onto the hangar straight, the Century Motorsport driver right on board with him as he encourages himself or his car perhaps to perform better, going down the back straight. Wiper working hard to clear his view as he hits the brakes again, scrambling for grip, lost the rear on the way in, then lost the front through the apex, and then on throttle application it's the rear that steps out once more. He made a definite gain through Stowe, and onto the brakes into Vale, wide to try and find the grip through the left, and then that puts him a bit too tight really into the right at Club, does it? Made a gain on the way into the corner, but look, Mark Elman able to get onto the throttle a little bit sooner than Akers. And then drifts out way wide over the curve, both of them do, and Akers had a mega run there past the wing and the international pit straight. Nowhere to go with it though into Abbey Corner. Brilliant onboard pictures these are from within the number 20 car as it sizes up the opposition ahead through the right at Abbey, the left at Farm, onto the brakes now into the loop sequence of corners. Right at Village, the left at the loop itself, and Ed Akers is hunting down Mark Elman, picture-in-picture showing us the external and internal views. We've got every angle covered of this terrific battle going on for 6th place, and I think this is a battle that could run and run, although Akers will hope that it doesn't. He wants to clear Elman as quickly as he can because he can see John Kearney escaping up the road. Drop down into Brooklands corner. Oh, Akers sideways under braking, throwing everything at it, and I don't know where Kearney was going there. There's taking a wide line, and then there's going off the track, which I think he very nearly did through Brooklands. Akers' car again understeering horrendously through the middle part of Luffield, but then he squares up the exit. It's on the curb, and that just drops him back a length or so. Fascinating stuff this, isn't it? In the wet conditions, cars that don't yield a lot of grip, but have a reasonable amount of power at their disposal. In the wet, it provides really, really good display of car control. 270 brake horsepower roughly produced by the Ford V6 engines underneath the bonnets of the Ginetta G56s. Top speed about 140 miles an hour, but it's not so much the speed that's impressive, it's getting that power down onto the ground that has always been a challenge, even in the dry in these cars. That hopefully gives you a little bit of extra appreciation for what we're seeing now. This is a titanic battle, as at various points, even within one corner, it looks as though Akers is gaining, and then Elman gets away from him slightly, and they're both, of course, back on the tail of John Kearney again now. Lead gap, by the way, is coming down, 4.8 seconds, so you're not missing anything there for the time being, but Ravi Ramyeed certainly hasn't given up his hopes of snatching this race victory back from his early championship rival, Nick White. 10.5 minutes still to go. He took on the previous lap about 9/10 out of the leader. At that rate, he could get there. And Akers has already caught Mark Elman. That's not the problem. It's now a case of finding a way through again. Just couldn't quite get the rear of the car settled there on turn-in. He's like to ride that inside curve, but again, the tighter line means that he just has to wait on the throttle slightly. The other thing that this onboard camera gives you an appreciation of is just how rough a ride it is. Think of Silverstone Grand Prix circuit as being silky smooth, but it isn't. There are bumps, and especially when you're riding over the curbs and splashing through the puddles. It was a rough ride inside the cars. It's noisy, it's hot, even in these conditions. And you're constantly working the wheel, working the pedals to try and keep control, to completely different lines there through Village, and the wider line for Elman wins out for now. I think it's raining again, by the way, which is why that standing water is starting to get a little bit worse. Not seeing any personal best sectors coming in. We have just had a very slow middle sector for Rami Ramyeed, though. And when I say very slow, I mean 4 seconds off the pace. So Ramyeed, I think, has been off again from second place. So that pursuit of the race leader may now be over, realistically, with 9¼ minutes to go. Focus solely now on this three-way battle for 5th position. John Kearney, Mark Elman, Ed Akers. Akers has been sat behind Elman for a number of laps now. Brilliant slide out of Luffield from the orange number 20. It was not the fastest way out of Luffield, but 10 out of 10 for style. As visibility most definitely now starts to get a little bit worse. As the conditions are deteriorating, by the way, Matt Shaw is getting away from Thomas Shelley. So the rookie leader in 3rd place, despite the worsening conditions, is looking really comfortable in that 3rd place overall, as the super slow-mo camera at Luffield shows us exactly how hard Ed Akers is having to work here as he tries to find a way past Mark Elman, understeer on the way into the corner as he transitions over that rubbered up inside line. And then, of course, he tries to come back across that line on the exit of the corner. And just at that point there, he loses traction on the rear. And brilliant car control and brilliant camera work as well from the super slow-mo down there at Luffield. Show us some of the most spectacular driving you'll see anywhere this coronation weekend at Silverstone. There is Nick White. Out of club corner, well, now with an 8.2 second lead over Ramyeed, who is 3.6 ahead of Shaw, so it's pretty well spread out at the front now after Ramyeed's latest moment, whatever that moment was, towards the conclusion of the previous lap, which was the 3rd sector where Ramyeed had a moment. So somewhere from Abbey through to the beginning of the Wellington Straight, it's entirely possible that he outbraked himself into this right-hander at the Village and ran onto the runoff area. Not a mistake that Nick White is making. And although there's no doubt about it, Ramyeed has been going faster than Nick White in this race. Nick, so far, touch wood, has not made a mistake, whereas Ramyeed has. And that's what's made the difference, really, for Nick White, who started off the season with a race victory at Alton Park. A race that he won over Ed Akers. So far, Ed's only appearance on the podium. There, visually, you can see the gaps between the top 3 cars. Ramyeed there, the blue, green and white car in second, and then a really impressive run this from Matt Shaw. 3rd place overall, the rookie leader. And as I said, he's not looking deterred at all by very difficult conditions out there. Brings the number 33 car through towards the conclusion of its 7th lap of the race. Ed Akers turns his way through Brooklands, still stuck behind Mark Elman. Oh, and carried a bit too much speed that time into Luffield corner, although watch for the exit. If he can keep the rear end in check, he should get a good run off the turn. Look at that, the ground that he picked up on the exit of the corner. So maybe that wasn't a mistake, maybe it was intentional, that super wide line. On board, you can see the speed difference as they come past the pits, and Mark Elman might have to defend into Cops corner. Akers peeking to the inside, but that's not where the grip is. You can't really outbrake someone on the inside at Cops in the wet. He does, though, carry visibly more mid-corner speed. They both run out over the curves, and Akers is all out of shape. Keeps his foot down, though. Look, didn't lose even an inch of track position to Elman as they came off the turn. Then you get into Maggots and Beckett's, which is very much single file, really. It's all about trying to get the good exit from this next right-hander and out through Chapel onto the Hanger Straight. If Akers can get a similar exit here to the one that he had out of Luffield just now, he should make the move, and that's exactly what he's done. Powers up alongside Mark Elman, and this time, surely, Ed Akers will move back up into 6th position. You can't see Ed Akers in the spray, but there you can just about get a peek of the orange number 20. He's on the outside line, he's later on the brakes, and he is back into 6th place. That was a lot of hard work, that, over a number of laps, and finally it pays dividends. That is Ben Cook, who has had a spin. That's between Brooklands and Luffield towards the end of the lap that he's just gone around. But Ed Akers, now that he's into 6th place, has got 5 minutes left to chase after and find a way past John Kearney to get back into the top 5 overall. Of course, that move on Elman puts him 5th within the GT Academy class, the sort of pro championship, if you like. More experienced drivers. like a top 5 overall if he can. Already starting to gap Elman slightly. Very hard to follow another car closely in these conditions. The spray just making it so tricky to pick out your reference points. And as we've seen, if you're slightly out with your line and you do go over that slippery part of the road, you just have no grip at all, and you only have to be a foot off, and suddenly you're skating off the road completely. So clear visibility is at a premium. Akers, you heard the rear wheels spinning up there underneath him as he came out of the loop. Can we have the onboard camera with Ed Akers every race, please? Because he's always at the heart of the action. And as we're seeing here in the wet, his car control is second to none. Fantastic stuff. Now through Brooklands again then, John Kearney, his next target. Kearney has slowly been gaining time again on Thomas Shelley too, so 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, all kind of bunching together a little bit, as we see another driver on a recovery drive. This is Lucy Tomlinson, number 13, having had a spin down at Vale on the first lap alongside Mackenzie Walker. And Lucy has caught now Harry Cook, who she started ahead of on the grid by a row. Two very different lines there through the left-hander at Farm. They both converge again, nose to tail through the right-hander at Village. Novice crosses on the back of both of these cars because they're both running within the rookie class. This is for 5th place actually in class. It's for 14th overall, but 5th of the rookies. Lucy Tomlinson trying to find her way through. What of Mackenzie Walker, by the way? Remember, he was second for half a lap at the start of the race before that spin down at Club. Well, he's recovered to 8th place overall, 7th in class. He's 5 seconds behind Mark Elman, and I don't think is likely to catch him in the time remaining, because they'll be coming through this time to start their final lap of the race. Not this battle, this is the penultimate lap of their race that's about to begin. And Lucy Tomlinson's got herself onto the outside line now. This should work if she's brave enough. Carries the speed right round the outside, makes that look very, very easy until she doesn't, because she goes out onto the gravel, and that was a bit too much speed carried. You may have the grippier side of the road on the outside, but you're closer to the edge of the road, so less margin for error. And Lucy Tomlinson, having briefly had her nose in front, falls back in behind Harry Cook again. Her best lap is 4.5 seconds quicker than Harry's best lap, and in fact on the previous lap she was 2 seconds faster, even with that moment, so she should find a way through on what is now the penultimate lap of the race for her. Ed Akers, by the way, on that previous lap was actually slower than John Kearney, so not taking any real time out of John just yet. That means that this remains really the best of the battles on track right now. As Lucy Tomlinson looks to try and carry that speed and do exactly what we saw from Akers a lap or so ago. Carry the speed down the hanger straight and make a pass into Stowe Corner. Now, that is John Kearney ahead of Thomas Shelley, but Shelley's back on the inside at Village. Where's Akers? Akers should be somewhere in this picture, and he is not. So Ed Akers has either got past them all or has had a moment somewhere. So, oh dear, Shelley, big slide there over the curbs coming out of the loop. And the 76 car, I don't know what's happened here actually, because, well, there's Akers. Akers has gone past all of them, so I stand corrected. Something's happened to the others, not Akers. Akers has for once managed to be in the right place at the right time and has picked up a few positions. That should now put him 4th overall, I think. And I'd love to know how that happened, because that was not the order I expected to see them in when we next cut to them. It was a very slow first sector for Shelley and Kearney. They were around about 14 seconds or so off the pace, so I wonder if they've had a little tangle somewhere. Anyway, they're still battling together, but now a bit further down the road than they should have been. Now this is what happened, down through Club. Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. There goes Shelley. He loses it on his own, and Kearney loses it in sympathy. They form almost a roadblock with just about a Ginetta-sized gap up the middle, and then Mark Elman spins as well. So all three of them going around simultaneously in the left-hand part of the Club sequence of corners, but all apparently by themselves. So that is one of the most bizarre things I've seen in some time. And well, that's how Ed Akers had his first bit of really good luck all race long, and it came at just the right time, because we're on the final lap now. And Akers up into 4th position. Would have taken that, I think, a few minutes ago if you'd have offered it to him. Meanwhile, Nick White, what's he been getting up to coming out of the right-hander at Club Corner? Well, he is on his final lap. and has been able to just back things off a little bit over the last few laps. Lost about 1.3 seconds to Ravi Ramid on the previous lap. He had over 5 seconds to play with, so he's absolutely fine. Just needs to bring this home now through the final half a lap. Lucy Tomlinson ahead of Harry Cook, is she now? No, she has dropped back somewhere on that lap. Yeah, she's just had a moment in the final sector. Lucy Tomlinson 7 seconds off the pace. And I'm hearing she had a spin at Luffield, so that's why she's fallen away from Harry Cook. Meanwhile, Nick White, one of the only drivers not to have had a spin in this race, it seems, is heading down the Wellington Straight for the final time. Ravi Ramid is getting close to him, but we know that the checkered flag awaits, and Nick White wants to make absolutely sure that he doesn't make a silly mistake at the end now and throw this one away. It's been a brilliant drive, this from Nick White. He looked like he was in trouble in the early laps, didn't he? Ramid was definitely coming for him, but Ramid made a couple of mistakes, handed the lead back over to Nick White. Was chasing him down, then made another mistake, and ultimately Nick just had to keep it on the island, and a second race victory of the season was going to be his. He will extend his championship lead over Ravi Ramid by claiming victory. Round number 4 of the Ginetta GT Academy here at Silverstone. Second place will be Ramid. The eventual winning margin is 3.3 seconds between them, but it could have been an awful lot closer, it has to be said. Now in third place, one of the drivers of the race actually, is Matt Shaw. I said that Nick White was about the only driver who hadn't had a spin. Well, add Matt Shaw onto that relatively short list, because he's going to come through to claim an overall podium and, perhaps more importantly, the rookie class win. That's his third class victory from the first 4 races of the season, and he's not finished worse than second in class at all so far this year. It's got all the hallmarks, this, of a championship campaign, hasn't it? Akers comes home a very fortuitous 4th, with Mackenzie Walker getting into the top 5 as well. So Mackenzie Walker also got past these 3 when they all had their calamity down at Club, with Kearney in the end coming home 6th, Shelley 7th, and Mark Hellman in 8th position. Amy Tomlinson will be 9th, and that's 2nd in the rookies, and then 3rd in the rookies, not far behind her, will be Charlotte Lowe. So, certainly didn't lack for entertainment, that race, did it? The Ginetta GT Academy, they'll be back out again twice more this weekend on tomorrow's main race day. They've got their they've got one more race, I beg your pardon, which is at the end of tomorrow, so 5:25 is when the second Ginetta GT Academy race of the weekend is due to get underway. The slightly longer races, of course, here at Silverstone, so they're not losing out on any track time. Here comes the 81, that's Phil McGarty. Didn't see a lot of Phil in that race. Phil in his second season now, I think, in GT Academy. Oh, and Lucy Tomlinson's gone off again. Now, she had a spin at Luffield on the previous lap. This is Brooklands, which is the preceding corner. And again, no harm done. You have to try quite hard to hit something here at Silverstone, in fairness, if you go off the track, and so thankfully no major damage being done, despite the amount of drivers who found themselves pointing the wrong way in this race. And Lucy Tomlinson has explored every inch of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. She loses a place on the final lap, though, to Ben Cook as a result of that spin, which was at least her 3rd of the race, because, of course, she span in sympathy of Mackenzie Walker right at the start of the race down at Club. But lots of things learned in that race for sure. And we'll be hoping for slightly more pleasant weather tomorrow. So, provisionally then, the race victory goes the way of Nick White, with Ravi Ramid in 2nd place. Matt Shaw 3rd will be the winner of the rookie class, with Ed Akers and Mackenzie Walker completing the top 5. John Kearney, Thomas Shelley and Mark Hellman 6th, 7th and 8th, but with plenty of stories to tell from that race, that's for sure. Amy Tomlinson next, and the top 10 completed by Charlotte Lowe. They were 2nd and 3rd respectively in the rookie class. Then it was Livesey and Emma Tomlinson, with Phil McGarty in 13th place, Harry and Ben Cook 14th and 15th respectively, Lucy Tomlinson 16th, and Richard Just in the end, the only non-finisher after that lap 1 contact with Ed Akers. So, Raceway Motorsport celebrate another race victory. They run 2 cars in this championship, Nick White and John Kearney. Could have had 2 cars inside the top 5 had it not been for John's late moment, but Nick White will give them plenty to celebrate. He gets out of the car and is very, very pleased with that, I'm sure. Nick White, his 2nd win of the year, and takes what was a 3-point championship lead and extends it by an extra few. You get 35 points for winning a race. You also get a point for pole, which of course went to Nick White, and then you get a point for fastest lap, which went to Ravi Ramid. So it's not quite a perfect score, but 36 points will play 31 for Ramid. So it's a 5-point game in total. I'm sure taking his helmet off, we can remind ourselves of some of the things that went on in the last 25 minutes or so. It was a lively start, one or two drivers not all that quick away from further back on the grid, but at the very front of the field we did have an awful lot of early action. Nick White retaining the lead in the early stages from Mackenzie Walker in second place, whilst Richard Just, the top rookie on the grid, was set to have a short-lived race, unfortunately. A slightly slow run through the first couple of corners allowed Ramyed and Ed Akers to get up the inside of him, and it was the latter of those two with whom Richard Just would tangle just a few moments later. After that had happened, Mackenzie Walker in second place had a spin down at Club. Ramyed and Akers both did a really good job to avoid him as other cars scattered left and right. Then we had the Akers and Just contact going up through Maggots and Beckett's. That was on the opening lap of the race, and that secondary contact, I think, is what did some damage to the right front corner of the Want to Race rookie driver's car. Richard Just became the race's only retirement. Much of the entertainment came from Ed Akers in those early stages, in fact through most of the race as he battled away with John Kearney, Mark Ellman and others, whilst Nick White was pursued and then overtaken briefly by Ravi Ramyed for the race lead. Ramyed going through on the outside into Stowe, definitely looked the quicker of the two, but unfortunately his time out in front would be short-lived. Nick White was able to keep the pressure on with some silky smooth driving, forcing Ramyed to drive a little bit harder perhaps than he really wanted to. Eventually the mistake came and it was down at the left-hand part of the club complex again. Ramyed spinning from the lead and Nick White managing to get back ahead of him. Ed Akers, meanwhile, was having a very interesting race. He gained some of the lost ground from lap one, then had this half spin at Brooklands, stalled the car and dropped back behind Mark Ellman and John Kearney, who he then started chasing after as the race wore on. Eventually, though, he was handed the places as first Thomas Shelley, then John Kearney, and then Mark Ellman went off altogether down through the left-hander at Club. In the end, though, Nick White claimed the overall race victory, and he'll be hoping for more tomorrow here at Silverstone. So, our opening race of the weekend for the Ginetta GT Academy, serving up plenty of thrills and spills here at Silverstone, as that fourth round of the championship is won by Nick White, with Matt Shaw claiming the rookie class honours, with, as I said, a very understated but very, very good third place finish overall. One or two drivers still making their way back to the pit lane, I think, but the drivers who are destined for the podium will be making their way now to the Silverstone podium, overlooking the start-finish straight here on the national end of the circuit. This is the Silverstone wing, where events such as the Formula 1 British Grand Prix are based. But for this British GT Silverstone 500 weekend, we're based out of the the traditional national pit lane, still more than up to the job. And it's a paddock that is absolutely full this weekend. Big grid, of course, of British GT cars, but good to see Ginetta continuing to be well supported. We've got all three of our Ginetta Championships here this weekend. The Academy kicking things off for us just now. We've got the Michelin Ginetta Junior Championship, which will be our next Ginetta action of the day. That is due to get underway at around about 3:25. And then stick around to the end of the day, because the Pro Tire Motorsport Ginetta GT Championship will have a 25-minute race to conclude the action. That's due to start at around about 5:30. So we've got you covered for Ginetta racing here this weekend. And as I said, hopefully the weather forecast will allow for a drier track by tomorrow, but that latest rain shower, as you can see, well and truly dousing the circuit with standing water. It's going to mean that for the foreseeable future, it's definitely a wet track that we are faced with here. So, waiting for drivers to hopefully make their way up to the podium. I can see out of my commentary box window a bit of activity up there, so I think we're not that far away from getting our top three in place. Nick White and Ravi Ramyed, I'm sure, are busy exchanging stories about how their race went first, because they had a lot going on there. That was a great pursuit of Nick White in the early stages by Ravi, who only started third and in qualifying was over a second slower than Nick White. But there we are getting drivers up onto the podium now then. And it is, first of all, going to be well, there's John Kearney getting up. Second place within his class. Ravi Ramid onto the top step of the podium as well, but it will eventually be Nick White who claims the winner's trophy after winning the opening race of the Ginetta GT Academy here at Silverstone.